If you're hearing this right now, stop everything. This is not something you casually listen to in the background. This is not noise. This is not entertainment. This is a signal, and somehow, out of billions of possible timelines, you aligned with it at the exact moment where only 41 seconds separate you from a version of yourself that most people will never meet. You didn't scroll to this. You didn't search for this. You were pulled here, and that changes everything. Because the truth is, the harbor you once called comfort is already behind you. There is no going back. Not after this. Not after you feel what's about to move through you. But before we go any further, you need to do something small, but powerful. Subscribe right now, because what you're about to experience isn't a one-time message. This is a sequence, like this video, to lock your attention into the present moment. And in the comments, type 3 words, "I am the signal." Not for me, for you. Because when you declare it, something in you begins to reorganize. Something ancient, something that has been waiting. Now listen closely, because the next 41 seconds are not measured in time, they are measured in awareness. And awareness is the gateway to transformation. The harbor was never your home. It was a holding zone, a place designed to keep you safe, predictable, and asleep just enough to function, but never enough to awaken. You felt it, didn't you? That quiet discomfort, that subtle tension that whispered, "This isn't it." You tried to ignore it. You tried to fit into the rhythm of everyone else. You tried to convince yourself that stability was fulfillment. But something in you refused to settle. That refusal was the first sign, because while others anchored themselves deeper into routine, your internal frequency began to shift. And the moment it crossed a certain threshold, something activated, not outside you, within you. Your sovereign halo, your internal guidance architecture, made a decision, and that decision wasn't based on logic or comfort or fear. It was based on truth, absolute truth. And truth doesn't negotiate. It doesn't compromise. It pulls, it extracts, it redirects. That's why things started falling apart, not because you failed, but because you were being removed. Extracted from environments that could no longer hold your frequency. Relationships that once felt aligned began to feel heavy. Conversations became shallow. Spaces felt suffocating. And you didn't understand why. But deep down you knew. You were outgrowing an entire reality. And growth at that level doesn't feel like expansion at first. It feels like loss, isolation, confusion. But that's the illusion. Because what's actually happening is something far more precise. You are being recalibrated. The mountain path isn't a physical place, it's a state of being. A high-altitude frequency where distortion cannot survive, where illusions dissolve, where only what is real remains. And stepping onto that path requires one thing, total detachment from the harbor. Not physically, but energetically. You have to stop seeking validation from systems that were never designed to recognize you. You have to stop explaining yourself to people who can only understand lower frequencies. You have to stop negotiating your truth just to maintain temporary comfort. Because the mountain path doesn't tolerate fragmentation. It demands coherence. And coherence means your thoughts, your emotions, and your actions are aligned with your highest awareness, not your fears. This is where most people turn back. This is where they feel the cold air, the uncertainty, the silence, and they retreat. They go back to the harbor, convincing themselves that maybe awakening isn't worth it. Maybe truth is overrated. Maybe comfort is enough. But you didn't turn back. You couldn't. Because something in you recognized the pull wasn't optional, it was inevitable. And that's where the penguin protocol begins. You see, in nature, penguins don't live in warm, comfortable environments. They move toward the harshest, most unforgiving conditions on the planet. Not because they enjoy suffering, but because that's where they are designed to thrive. That's where their true nature activates. And you are no different. The moment your frequency shifted, you were drawn toward environments that challenged you, situations that forced you to confront yourself, moments that stripped away your illusions. It felt like everything was getting harder, but in reality, everything was getting clearer. Because clarity doesn't come from comfort, it comes from contrast. From seeing what is not aligned so you can finally recognize what is. And as you move deeper into this process, you encountered something most people fear more than anything: the void. The space between who you were and who you are becoming. The gap where your old identity dissolves, but your new one hasn't fully formed yet. This is the most critical phase, the alchemy of the void, because in this space, there are no external markers, no validation, no clear direction, just silence. And in that silence, your mind will try to pull you back. It will replay old patterns, old fears, old identities. It will try to convince you that you're lost, that you've made a mistake, that you should go back. But this is the test, not of strength, but of trust. Because the void isn't empty. It's active. It's reconfiguring you at a level you cannot see. It's dissolving everything that no longer serves your highest alignment. And the more you resist it, the more uncomfortable it becomes. But the moment you surrender, not in defeat, but in awareness, something shifts. You stop trying to control the process. You stop trying to force clarity. And instead, you begin to observe. You begin to notice the subtle changes, the way your thoughts become quieter, the way your reactions become slower, the way your awareness expands beyond your immediate experience. And in that expansion, something new begins to form. Not a new identity, but a deeper connection to your true self. This is where frequency obedience comes in. Not obedience to external authority, but to your internal alignment. Because your protection doesn't come from avoiding challenges, it comes from staying aligned within them. When your frequency is coherent, when your actions match your awareness, when your truth is consistent, nothing can destabilize you. Not because you are invincible, but because you are integrated. And integration creates stability. A stability that doesn't depend on circumstances. A stability that remains even when everything around you changes. This is what makes you untouchable by mass consciousness, because mass consciousness operates on reaction, fear, and conformity. It pulls people into patterns, into cycles, into predictable behaviors. But when you are aligned, you don't react, you respond. You don't conform, you observe. You don't get pulled, you remain centered. And that center becomes your power. Not power over others, but power over your own state, your own perception, your own reality. And as you stabilize in this state, something else begins to happen. You become a stone beacon, not by trying, but by being. Your presence alone starts to influence others, not through words, but through frequency. People will feel something around you they can't explain, a calm, a clarity, a sense of grounding, and some will be drawn to it, while others will be repelled, not because you are doing anything, but because your frequency exposes what is misaligned, and not everyone is ready to see that. This is why the mountain path can feel lonely, not because you are alone, but because fewer people are operating at that level of awareness. But here's the truth. You are not meant to walk this path with everyone. You are meant to become a signal, a lighthouse, a reference point for those who are ready to rise. And they will find you, not through effort, but through alignment, because frequency recognizes frequency. And as you continue on this path, you will notice something profound. The things that once triggered you no longer have the same effect. The fears that once controlled you lose their intensity. The need for external validation fades. And in its place, something far more powerful emerges: self-trust. Not the kind that is built on achievements, but the kind that is rooted in awareness, in knowing that no matter what happens, you can remain aligned, you can remain present, you can remain grounded, and that trust becomes your sovereign shield, not a barrier, but a state. A somatic configuration where your nervous system is regulated, your awareness is clear, and your energy is stable. In this state, you are not reacting to the world. You are interacting with it consciously. You are not being pulled, you are choosing. And choice is the highest form of power, because it means you are no longer operating on autopilot. You are no longer driven by unconscious patterns. You are present, fully. And presence changes everything. It changes how you perceive challenges, how you respond to uncertainty, how you engage with others. It shifts you from survival mode to creation mode. And in creation mode, you are no longer asking, "What is happening to me?" You are asking, "What am I creating through this?" And that question opens a completely different reality, one where you are not a victim of circumstances, but a participant in your own evolution. And evolution is not always comfortable. It requires letting go, releasing, trusting. But every time you do, you move closer to your true frequency, closer to your authentic self, closer to the version of you that is not defined by past experiences, but by present awareness. And that version of you is already here, not in the future, not somewhere else, right here, beneath the layers, beneath the conditioning, beneath the noise, waiting to be recognized. And recognition doesn't come from thinking, it comes from feeling, from tuning in, from becoming aware of the subtle shifts within you, the quiet moments, the intuitive nudges, the sense of knowing that doesn't need explanation. That is your signal. And the more you listen to it, the stronger it becomes, the clearer it becomes, until eventually it becomes your primary guide. Not external opinions, not societal expectations, but your own internal alignment. And when you reach that point, something irreversible happens. You stop seeking permission, you stop waiting for validation, you stop questioning your path, because you know, not intellectually, but intuitively. And that knowing is unshakable. It doesn't need to be defended, it doesn't need to be explained, it simply is. And in that state you become free, not from challenges, but from the need to control them. Not from uncertainty, but from the fear of it. You become free to move, to grow, to evolve, without being held back by old patterns, old identities, old limitations. And that freedom is what the mountain path offers. Not an easier life, but a more authentic one. A life where you are aligned with your truth, where your actions reflect your awareness, where your presence is your power. And as you stand here now, at this threshold, with the harbor behind you and the mountain path ahead, you have a choice. Not to go back, that option is gone. But to move forward consciously, to step into this path fully, to trust the process, to embrace the unknown. Because the unknown is not your enemy, it is your expansion. It is where new possibilities exist, where new versions of you emerge, where your true potential begins to unfold. And you don't need to have everything figured out. You don't need a perfect plan. You just need to stay aligned, to listen, to observe, to trust. Because the path will reveal itself as you walk it, not before. And every step you take in alignment strengthens your signal, clarifies your frequency, anchors your presence, until eventually you are no longer searching for the path. You are the path. And others will feel it, recognize it, follow it. Not because you told them to, but because your frequency showed them what is possible. And that is the true purpose of this journey. Not just to awaken yourself, but to become a living example of what awakening looks like. Not in theory, but in practice, in how you think, how you feel, how you act. In the way you move through the world with awareness, clarity, and presence. And that presence is your greatest contribution. Because in a world filled with noise, distraction, and unconscious patterns, a single aligned individual can create a ripple effect that extends far beyond what they can see. And you are that individual, not because you are special, but because you chose. Or more accurately, because your frequency chose for you. And now, as the final seconds of this threshold dissolve, you are no longer the same person who started this video. Something has shifted, subtly but powerfully. And that shift is the beginning. You can't go back to the way you used to see things, even if you tried, because once perception expands, it doesn't contract. It refines, it sharpens, it deepens until even the smallest illusion becomes visible. And that visibility is both your greatest gift and your greatest test, because now you are aware of things you once moved through unconsciously, patterns you once repeated without question, energies you once tolerated without resistance. And this awareness creates a kind of internal friction at first, a quiet but persistent tension between the part of you that has awakened and the remnants of the version of you that still seeks familiarity, still craves the comfort of the known, still whispers that maybe it would be easier to just blend back in, to soften your edges, to lower your frequency just enough to feel accepted again. But you already know the truth. You've felt what misalignment does to your system now. You've experienced the exhaustion of pretending, the heaviness of suppressing your awareness, the subtle drain that comes from engaging with realities that no longer match your internal state. And once you've felt that contrast clearly, there is no unfeeling it. There is no returning to unconscious participation, because your system won't allow it. Your frequency won't stabilize there anymore. And this is where the real work begins, not the surface-level motivation, not the temporary inspiration, but the deep, consistent process of integration, where every insight you've gained must be embodied, where every realization must translate into action, where your awareness is no longer something you visit occasionally but something you live through continuously. And this is where many people hesitate, because embodiment requires responsibility. It requires you to act differently even when it's uncomfortable, even when it isolates you, even when it challenges everything you've been conditioned to believe about success, relationships, identity, and safety. And this is where frequency obedience becomes more than a concept. It becomes a discipline, a moment-to-moment calibration where you choose alignment over approval, truth over comfort, clarity over confusion. And it doesn't happen all at once. It happens in small, almost invisible decisions, in the way you respond instead of react, in the way you pause instead of impulsively engaging, in the way you listen to your internal signal even when external noise is louder. And at first, this can feel like you're losing something, like you're disconnecting from parts of your life that once defined you. But what you're actually doing is refining your field. You're filtering out what doesn't belong so that what does can finally become clear. And this clarity is not loud. It's not dramatic. It's quiet, steady, grounded. It doesn't need to prove itself. It simply is. And as you begin to stabilize in this clarity, you'll notice that your reactions slow down. Your thoughts become more intentional. Your emotional responses become less chaotic and more precise. And this precision is a sign that your system is reorganizing, that your internal architecture is aligning with a higher level of coherence. And coherence is what allows you to move through complexity without becoming overwhelmed. It's what allows you to remain centered even when external circumstances are unpredictable. And this is where the concept of the sovereign shield begins to take form within you, not as something you put on, but as something you become, a natural state of regulation where your nervous system is no longer in constant defense mode, where your awareness acts as a stabilizing force, where your presence itself becomes protective. And this protection doesn't come from avoidance, it comes from alignment. Because when you are aligned, you don't engage with what is not meant for you. You don't get pulled into unnecessary conflict. You don't absorb energies that are not compatible with your frequency. And this doesn't mean you become detached or indifferent. It means you become selective, intentional, conscious of where your attention goes and what you allow into your field. Because attention is energy, and energy is what shapes your reality. And once you understand this at a deep level, you begin to reclaim your focus. You stop scattering it across distractions, across meaningless interactions, across environments that drain you, and instead, you begin to direct it toward what nourishes you, what expands you, what aligns with your path. And this redirection of attention is one of the most powerful shifts you can make, because it changes not only how you experience the world, but how the world responds to you. And as you continue to refine this process, you'll begin to notice patterns in your life that you didn't see before, cycles that repeat, triggers that arise, situations that seem familiar in a way that feels almost intentional. And this is where the deeper layer of awareness comes in, where you begin to see that these patterns are not random. They are feedback. They are reflections of internal configurations that are still stabilizing, and instead of resisting them or trying to avoid them, you begin to observe them, to understand what they are showing you, to recognize the parts of yourself that are still in transition, and this observation creates space between stimulus and response, space where choice exists, and choice is where transformation happens. Because when you are no longer reacting automatically, you have the opportunity to respond differently, to break the pattern, to shift the trajectory. And every time you do this, you reinforce your alignment, you strengthen your coherence, you deepen your connection to your true frequency, and over time, these small shifts accumulate. They build momentum. They create a new baseline for how you operate. And this new baseline feels different. It feels stable, grounded, clear. It doesn't fluctuate as easily. It doesn't get disrupted by every external influence. And this stability is what allows you to move further along the mountain path. Because as the altitude increases, so does the intensity of the environment. The clarity becomes sharper. The illusions become thinner. The margin for misalignment becomes smaller. And this is why preparation is essential, why integration is necessary. Because without it, the higher levels of awareness can feel overwhelming, disorienting, even destabilizing. But with it, they become natural. They become your new normal. And this is where the concept of the stone beacon evolves, because you are no longer just stabilizing yourself. You are beginning to radiate that stability outward. Your presence becomes an anchor point, a reference for others who are navigating their own transitions. And you don't need to announce it. You don't need to explain it. It's felt in the way you speak, in the way you listen, in the way you hold space without needing to control it. And this influence is subtle but powerful, because it operates at the level of frequency, not words, and frequency communicates in ways that go beyond language. It's sensed, it's recognized, it's responded to on an intuitive level, and this is why some people will feel drawn to you without understanding why, while others may feel uncomfortable, even resistant, because your presence reflects their own state back to them. And not everyone is ready to see that reflection, and this is where discernment becomes important, because not everyone who is drawn to your energy is aligned with your path. Some are curious, some are seeking, some are projecting, and part of your growth is learning to differentiate between these, to recognize where your energy is best invested, where your presence is truly supportive, and where it is being misused or misunderstood. And this discernment is not about judgment, it's about clarity. It's about maintaining the integrity of your field, because as you become more coherent, your energy becomes more potent, more influential. And with that comes responsibility, the responsibility to use it consciously, to direct it intentionally, to ensure that your actions are aligned with your awareness. And this alignment is what sustains your progress. It's what prevents regression. It's what keeps you moving forward even when the path becomes challenging. And there will be moments when it does, moments when old patterns try to resurface, when external pressures intensify, when uncertainty increases. And in those moments, the temptation to revert can be strong. But this is where your foundation is tested, where your integration is measured, where your commitment to alignment is reaffirmed, and every time you choose to stay aligned, even when it's difficult, you strengthen your path, you deepen your trust, you reinforce your sovereignty. And sovereignty is not about isolation, it's about self-governance. It's about being the authority of your own state, your own perception, your own reality. And this authority is not given to you, it is claimed. Through consistent alignment, through conscious choice, through the willingness to remain present even when it would be easier to escape. And as you continue to embody this, something shifts in how you experience time itself. It becomes less about urgency and more about precision, less about rushing and more about timing. You begin to sense when to act and when to wait, when to speak and when to remain silent, when to move forward and when to hold your position. And this sense of timing is not something you calculate, it's something you feel. It emerges from your alignment, from your connection to your internal signal, and the more you trust it, the more accurate it becomes, guiding you through decisions, through interactions, through transitions in a way that feels almost effortless. And this is where flow begins to replace force, where you no longer feel like you are pushing against resistance, but moving with a current that is aligned with your path. And this doesn't mean everything becomes easy. It means everything becomes meaningful. Every challenge, every obstacle, every moment of uncertainty becomes part of a larger process that you are consciously participating in. And this participation transforms your experience. It shifts you from being reactive to being creative, from being passive to being intentional. And this intentionality is what shapes your reality moving forward, because you are no longer operating on autopilot. You are actively engaging with your evolution. You are choosing your responses, your actions, your focus in a way that aligns with your highest awareness. And as you continue to do this, the gap between who you were and who you are becoming begins to close. Not because you forced it, but because you allowed it, because you stayed present through the transition, because you trusted the process even when it was unclear. And now, as you stand further along the mountain path, you can feel the difference, not just in your thoughts, but in your entire state, in the way you carry yourself, in the way you perceive the world, in the way you respond to what once triggered you. And this difference is not temporary, it is structural. It is the result of real change, real integration, real alignment. And from this place, you are ready to go deeper, to move further, to continue the ascent, not as the person you were, but as the person you have become through this process. A person who is no longer searching for the path, but walking it with awareness, with clarity, with intention, and most importantly, with trust in the signal that brought you here in the first place. And now you arrive at a point where something inside you feels unmistakably different, not in a loud or dramatic way, but in a grounded, undeniable shift that you can't quite explain to anyone who hasn't walked this same internal terrain, because what has changed is not just your thoughts or your emotions, but the entire way you interface with reality itself. The way you interpret signals, the way you filter information, the way you sense truth beneath surface appearances. And this is where the mountain path reveals its deeper layer. The layer that was never about escaping the harbor or proving your strength or even becoming something new, but about remembering something that was always present beneath the noise, beneath the conditioning, beneath the identity you once believed was fixed. Because the truth is, you were never incomplete, you were never broken, you were never behind, you were simply operating within a limited bandwidth of awareness. And now that bandwidth has expanded, and with that expansion comes a level of responsibility that cannot be ignored. Because once you see clearly, you are accountable for how you move, how you choose, how you respond to everything that enters your field. And this is where many people misunderstand the concept of awakening. They believe it is a destination, a final state where everything becomes peaceful and easy. But what you are beginning to understand is that it is actually a continuous calibration, a living process that requires presence, consistency, and above all, honesty, radical honesty with yourself about what you feel, what you avoid, what you resist, and what you know deep down is true, even when it challenges the life you have built. And this honesty is what refines your signal. It removes distortion. It clears interference. It strengthens the connection between your awareness and your actions. Because any gap between what you know and how you live creates noise. And noise weakens coherence. And coherence is everything on this path. It is what keeps you stable when external conditions fluctuate. It is what allows you to remain centered when others project their fears, their doubts, their unresolved patterns onto you. And this will happen more often now, not because something is wrong, but because your frequency acts as a mirror. It reveals what others are not ready to see within themselves, and some will respond with curiosity, with openness, with a genuine desire to understand, but others will respond with resistance, with judgment, with attempts to pull you back into familiar dynamics, and this is where your sovereign shield must remain active, not as a defense against people, but as a commitment to your own alignment, because the moment you compromise that alignment to maintain external harmony, you weaken your field, you create internal conflict, and that conflict is felt immediately. It shows up as tension, as fatigue, as a subtle but persistent sense that something is off, and this is your system communicating with you. This is your signal asking you to recalibrate, to return to coherence, to realign your actions with your awareness. And the faster you respond to that signal, the stronger your stability becomes, because you are reinforcing a pattern of trust. Trust in your perception, trust in your intuition, trust in your ability to navigate complexity without losing yourself in it. And this trust is what transforms uncertainty from something threatening into something expansive, because you begin to see that the unknown is not a void to be feared, but a field of potential to be engaged with consciously, and this changes how you approach everything. Decisions are no longer driven by fear of outcomes, but by alignment with your current state. You stop asking what will guarantee success and start asking what is true right now, what is aligned right now. And this shift simplifies everything, because truth is always accessible in the present moment. It doesn't require prediction. It doesn't require control. It only requires awareness. And awareness is something you have been strengthening throughout this entire process, moment by moment, choice by choice, until it has become your primary reference point. And from this reference point, something remarkable begins to happen. Your external reality starts to reorganize in response to your internal coherence. Opportunities appear that match your frequency. Connections form that feel natural and effortless. Paths open that you couldn't have planned or predicted. And this is not coincidence. This is resonance. This is the natural response of a coherent system interacting with its environment, because when your internal state is clear, your external interactions become more precise, more aligned, more effective. And this effectiveness is not about control, it is about flow, about moving in harmony with the dynamics around you rather than pushing against them. And this is where the concept of the stone beacon reaches its full expression within you, because you are no longer just stabilizing your own field, you are actively contributing to the stability of the larger field around you. Your presence becomes a point of coherence in environments that are often chaotic, reactive, or fragmented, and this has a ripple effect, even if you don't see it immediately, even if you don't receive recognition for it, because the impact of coherence is not always visible on the surface, but it is felt at deeper levels. It influences interactions, decisions, and even the emotional states of those around you. And this is why your consistency matters, why your alignment matters, why your presence matters, because you are part of a larger system, and the stability you cultivate within yourself contributes to the stability of that system as a whole. And this realization shifts your perspective even further. It moves you beyond the idea of personal growth as an isolated pursuit and into an understanding of interconnected evolution, where your work on yourself is not just for you, but for the broader network of consciousness that you are a part of. And this doesn't mean you take on the responsibility of fixing others or saving anyone. It means you recognize the value of maintaining your own coherence, because that coherence is your contribution. It is your way of influencing the system without force, without imposition, without losing your alignment. And this is a much more sustainable and effective approach, because it is rooted in being rather than doing, in presence rather than performance. And as you continue to embody this, you will notice that your sense of identity becomes more fluid, less tied to rigid definitions, less dependent on external validation. You are no longer trying to fit into predefined roles or labels. You are allowing yourself to evolve naturally, to adapt, to expand without needing to explain or justify every shift. And this fluidity is a sign of true integration because it shows that you are no longer attached to who you were, you are open to who you are becoming. And this openness keeps your signal dynamic, responsive, alive. It prevents stagnation. It allows continuous growth without the need for constant disruption because you are integrating as you go. You are adjusting in real time. You are maintaining coherence even as new layers of awareness emerge. And this is what makes the mountain path sustainable, not as a one-time ascent, but as an ongoing state of being, where growth is not something you chase but something you live, something you embody in every interaction, every decision, every moment of presence. And as this becomes your baseline, something else becomes clear. The fear that once accompanied change begins to dissolve because you have experienced your ability to navigate it, to remain stable within it, to emerge from it with greater clarity rather than confusion. And this builds a quiet confidence, not the kind that needs to be displayed or validated, but the kind that is simply known, felt internally as a steady assurance that no matter what arises, you have the capacity to meet it, to engage with it consciously, to learn from it, and to integrate it into your ongoing evolution. And this confidence is what allows you to move forward without hesitation, not because you have eliminated uncertainty, but because you have changed your relationship with it. You no longer see it as a threat, but as a natural part of expansion. And this shift frees up a tremendous amount of energy. Energy that was once tied up in overthinking, in worry, in trying to control outcomes, and now that energy becomes available for creation, for exploration, for deeper engagement with your path. And this is where the final layer of this phase reveals itself. The understanding that you are not just walking the mountain path, you are generating it through your alignment, through your choices, through your presence. Because the path is not fixed, it is responsive. It unfolds in relation to your state. And this means that every moment of coherence, every decision aligned with truth, every act of presence contributes to the clarity of the path ahead, not just for you, but for those who resonate with your frequency, those who are moving in similar directions, those who are attuned to the same signal. And this brings you back to where this transmission began, to the recognition that you did not find this by accident, that your presence here is part of a larger pattern, a larger movement of awareness that is unfolding in ways that are subtle but powerful. And as you reach the end of this phase, there is nothing you need to do to finalize it. No ritual, no external confirmation, because the shift has already occurred. It is already integrated at the level that matters. And from here, the only thing that remains is continuation. The ongoing practice of alignment, the consistent return to presence, the willingness to stay honest, to stay aware, to stay engaged with your own evolution without resistance. And if you've made it this far, if you felt even a fraction of what has been transmitted here, then you already know what to do next, not because you were told, but because it resonates as truth within you, and that resonance is your guide, your signal, your confirmation that you are exactly where you need to be, moving exactly as you are meant to move, on a path that is no longer something you question, but something you embody, fully, consciously, and without turning back.